can't take off of, or
Yeah.
we're still human, right? So that's what we're trying to bring tools for everybody, right? It's not necessarily what we think, it's how we think. And we're trying to hack the how we're getting through our day so that we can bring more joy.
And we're live and in living color. Welcome to the Journey to Your Best Self podcast, brought to you by Your One Self. As always, I'm your host, Brian O'Neill. Together, we'll explore the transformative journey of self-discovery and holistic integration. Our purpose is to provide ancient wisdom and evidence-based methods, allowing you to merge your mind, body, and spirit into a harmonious whole. Alongside me today, we are blessed to have Tara O'Neill, a clinical hypnotherapist, certified life coach, and certified yoga instructor. Hi, Tara.
Hello. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, I'm very excited to explore relief. We talked about stress relief last time, overlapping into overwhelm, anxiety, and the like. So really looking forward to sharing some of our tools and experiences to help everyone out.
Absolutely. Our co-host, Andrew, will be joining us in a few short episodes. But until then, let's dive in and embark on this journey. So today we wanted to talk about a massacre of the English language. Overwhelm. Overwhelm. So, phrased differently, but we've all heard of or felt or know someone or had many moments of being overwhelmed. So we're going to try to talk about navigating overwhelm. So can you first just kind of give us a broad kind of summary definition?
Absolutely,
How
yeah.
overwhelm comes from anxiety. What exactly we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, so I just want to also let's just be real. As we were prepping for the podcast, I kept using the term overwhelm, and I think Brian so eloquently and maybe not so elegantly was like, why do you keep saying the word overwhelm? Because it's not generally used in historically a noun, right? I'm overwhelmed. But in recent years, post-pandemic, overwhelm became a state of being. And so we could often talk about anxiety as in the context of a physiological response. We know a lot of times it will cause a rapid heart rate, sweaty palms, maybe shaking, tightness in the chest, nausea in the stomach. And so we can really distinctly usually say, oh, I'm feeling anxious or I'm having an anxiety attack. With overwhelm, it's a little different, and it can manifest a little bit more in your head as a lot of different things happening at once and not even knowing where to start. I think many people have had that, and a lot of people in our modern world, right? If you wake up in the morning and you look at your to-do list, you probably don't even have to look at your to-do list, right? You're waking up to overwhelm. Like, I had to take the kids to school. I got to get to my class. I got to get to work. I got to pack lunch. I got to make sure I stop for gas. Like, that could be a little bit of overwhelm. But often we start doing and we check the boxes off our to-do list. We start to feel at ease. We start to regulate. And as we get things done and usually have a little bit of support, we start to feel better and this overwhelm starts to go down. The problem becomes more when we have constant overwhelm and we're not regulating back down, and we're adding more and more things. And then there's also a phenomena where we tend to not end up doing anything that's on our list that's actually of importance. And then we're kind of running around doing things to maybe make ourselves feel a little bit better, but not actually helping the core of the
Excellent. So that that distinction, right, is important between the two.
Yes,
Because
yes,
if
because
you
a
don't
lot of
identify what you're dealing with, then it's difficult to find strategies and tools to kind of alleviate what you're going through.
absolutely, absolutely. And one of the reasons we're talking about this is so we can identify it and we can start talking to others and to ourselves how to know, okay, if you're having anxiety, that's going to be a little bit different than if you're having overwhelm. That might be a little bit different than if you're feeling stressed. And so when we start to bring these words in, we talk about it, get help from other people, be it loved ones around us, friends, or professionals or coworkers.
Absolutely. And then to further kind of, I guess they're very related, and it's so dependent upon the person afflicted. But what about the difference between, if we think about people's experience and kind of how categorize them into two kind of broad groups? We have the people that are overwhelmed when they're, and how they kind of reflexively deal with it. So you're either going to multitask like to the nth degree, where you're just bouncing around from task to task that you think you have to do right away, but then in an hour, in 2 hours, in a day, nothing really is getting accomplished. So you have, that's one way that people deal with overwhelm. And then you have another way it manifests where people just become frozen and really unable to start anything. So, at the end of the day, you have the powerless feeling, and then you have the stuck in, and then you can just get stuck in the cycle where you're just doing a little bit of everything, but you're not really doing anything, right? Jack of all trades, master of none type, but on a
Right,
really
right.
next
Yeah, I
level. And
mean,
then you have the shutdown. So what about those two different ways people deal with it?
sure. We can help me with this metaphor if we think of it as, our to-do list as electronics. I don't know. You might not have ever blew a fuse with the blow dryer. I don't know if you viewers are watching this, haha. But when you have the when you have the blow dryer on and you have the air conditioner on and you have the
Mm,
microwave on and you have the
mm,
curling iron on, you might blow a fuse, right? So we might say the person that's overwhelmed does one task at a time. The person that is, so the one type of overwhelm is like, okay, I see I have to do all of these. I'm gonna start doing them, and the person that maybe goes into shutdown puts them all on at the same time, and then the fuse blows and it's like, well, I can't do any of them now. So you go into a shutdown mode, and it, because it's so it overwhelms the system so much to the point where
mm.
it shuts down, it shuts off, it's off. And it is a little bit harder to get that back on and going. So we want to prevent ourselves from getting to that point where we, it could have a feeling of hopelessness as well. And so that's what we're going to talk a little bit about, some of the things to do to prevent that, and also
Mhm.
to deal with it if it does happen. So we want to prevent it before it happens, but it will happen. So we'll give you the tools for it, or it may happen.
Yeah, I mean, not definitely don't have the blow dryer experience literally, but there's been a lot of things plugged. I mean, well, as you were talking and as we were prepping, I was, when you were defining things, I was thinking about how um a big moment that I had was, you know, while starting I'm working with you guys to bring your oneself to the public and kind of expand it. And then on top of that, whenever you start something, it takes so much of your attention, but then you have, your other things that you have to do before that came into your life. So I had the regular 9 to 5 family, um, you know, fun, different things. that you want to do. And you feel like there's just too much, right? There's just too much, and there's just not going to be enough time. And then you start to, get into your head about the breakdown, how much time, sleep, right? That's another thing that you have to account for, right? Which takes a third of our day up, or it should anyway. So there was all those things that kind of built, and you feel like, another brick's kind of been added, and you're just kind of getting crushed. And then eventually, I mean, I didn't get to the point where I did shut down, but you could imagine it happening. It seemed, kind of realistic, or a possible response. So I found that, and you can talk more about this, but one of the things that I found was communicating with people about what's going on, how you're feeling, what has changed is critical. Those that are near you or involved in any of those plugins that you're trying to figure out or accomplish or go through, and then prioritizing certain things. So can you talk, maybe not from my experience, but maybe from a client recently, or somebody that you had to kind of work through this, and suggest some things, and guide them, and how that turned out?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think this would be a good time to talk about prioritizing
Mm.
and intention setting, which can help with the prioritizing. So if you identify your intention, which is what you want, what you truly want, it can help clarify what you're doing, what's most important of all the things that you're doing, right? So take my scenario before. Most important thing would have been, okay, okay, maybe I can't blow dry my hair, but I got to eat breakfast. So I'm going to just forget the hair appliances, and I'm going to just focus on using the toaster to heat up my breakfast and deal with it. Maybe so you can just choose, what do I absolutely need in this scenario? Where can I cut out the fat? So I know that's a separate issue, but also, yes, if you have people that are around you saying, hey, this is really important to me. I really need to get out of the house right now, and I really need to eat. So do you think you could help me? And 100% of the time, I've had people that have been around me, my loved ones, my colleagues, my coworkers, have said, yeah, sure, absolutely, I'll help you. And 100% of the time that somebody has verbalized it to me, what's important to them, I say, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not always going to be 100%, but really close, right? So if you went to your wife and you said, hey, things are shifting, but this project's really important to me, I'm guessing she would have, she did say, right, we'll make it work, right? But if you didn't tell her what was going on, and she's like, where the heck is Brian been? What's he up to? Like, is he playing video games? Like, we don't know. And so, yes, I've had clients, a lot of times, women, I don't want to call women out, but I've noticed it more in my female clients, is we do this mind reading. Like, why didn't you know? Like, why didn't you know what I was going through or experiencing? And we expect the other person to read our minds. And what I've learned over my own personal experience is that I have to be assertive and say what's important to me, and define it, and say what I need, even if it's just to be heard, or actually to be supported. And again, you'll be so surprised when you go to people with that vulnerability, like, I need a little help. Like, hey, I know we're really busy, but getting to that yoga class at the end of the day is so important for me. So can we get takeout, or can we skip that Netflix show, whatever it might be? Like, it can seem a little trite or almost silly, and that's why we sometimes don't say it, but just say, right now, it's really important to me right now. And that's hard to argue with, right? Because that's your truth, right? And if people aren't respecting your truth, then we have to, I mean, that's another episode than what we would have to address. But you want to be, usually when you're around people that care about you, and love you, they're supporting you and your truth.
Excellent. Very well said. I mean, a lot to definitely expand on there in later episodes. I mean, so it's critical really then to surround yourself with people that you can rely on and that you can be open and honest with and trust, right? Because otherwise, um, they won't understand, or they won't be there necessarily to help you out. So but I think that, like you said, if your feelings out into the open or your situation, I think that you'd be surprised that a lot of people will be receptive, because a lot of people have either gone through something like that in the past or are even at the time going through it. So it will make you more relatable, because I think this is something that affects so many. So it's not an admission of weakness or your inability or a shortcoming
Right.
necessarily. So you don't be afraid to kind of open yourself up and put yourself out there. What about one of the things that is challenging, though, is the prioritization, right? So we have, um, it's easy to say, oh yeah, well, just do the things that are most important, right? But just prioritize. Obviously, what you need to do is the things that are the number one priority, do them first, and then the secondary and tertiary things, when you have time, you get to those. But I think a lot of people, myself included, when you have so much, it's trying to figure out like a map, a strategy, or a plan. And one of the things that we had talked about and used, I had used in the past, and Andrew had kind of introduced to me years back, was the Eisenhower Method. Um, so can we talk a little bit about, maybe I could tee you off and just give a generalization, and then you could talk about how it can be utilized in people that, are feeling overwhelmed. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And go ahead.
No, I was, just kind of a general broad summary. We can definitely include our copy in the show notes. We'll post it up if you're watching as well. So basically, the Eisenhower Method's sometimes matrix. It's called. Um, it's like a framework designed to prioritize um, tasks, objectives, goals based on their urgency and importance, right? And the great thing about it is it's so your oneself, because of its simplicity, um, and its utility and its effectiveness. So that's amazing. It's so you don't need to be trained to use it. You don't need to have to watch a DIY video to figure out how to use it. It's pretty straightforward. So basically, what happens is you have a worksheet or a digital document, and it's broken into 4 quadrants. So if you could visualize, you have there's urgent and important. So it's all a play off of either important or urgent. And then you have the other end of the spectrum of each of those, not important, not urgent. So in quadrant 1, we have urgent and important, right? Those are the tasks that need immediate attention and are crucial for your goals. So those are the ones that you need to complete first to prevent, a crisis or something getting exacerbated further. And they will, completing those and working on those will kind of immediately alleviate any kind of stress that you have related to this overwhelm. So that's going to be the first thing that's going to help you right away. And then the secondary category, important but not urgent, right? So those are things that are critical for long-term success, but they're not immediate. So they don't need to be done right now, but they have to stay kind of on the forefront, because getting those done in the midterm kind of can help ensure progress, right? And not have them go into category 1 where they are urgent, right? So that's why they're second on the radar. And then third, urgent but not important at all, right? So these are tasks that do require immediate attention but are not long-term critical. So those are kind of things that you can delegate. You can get other people to do, right? It is urgent that you go walk the dog, for instance. But if you have someone else, your spouse, partner could do it, or a child, all right, or a son or daughter, or a neighbor, or whoever, it is urgent to do that, but it's not super important because that's just kind of a routine thing that someone else can do, and it's not necessarily important for you to do, right? So that's urgent but not important. And then last but not least, these are the things that we really need to kind of minimize, and they're just filling up so much of space. Not urgent and not important, so neither, right? Those are the things that we phone things, right, that you're involved with. There is a time for decompressing, but if it becomes too much, looking at the number of likes that you have on a post, right, trying to get high score in a phone game, the things that are not necessarily meaningless but don't have the meaning of the things that are most important to you. So that's kind of the 4 quadrants that we have here. But if you go from box 1 to 4, right, and you have a system, right, that you've categorized things, it's been a proven method. I mean, Dwight Eisenhower, right, whether or not he was involved in making this, he did use something similar, the night before the next work day to kind of, categorize the things that are important or not important, right? And it would, like, Benjamin Franklin had something very similar with when he was deciding whether or not something was worth pursuing. He would kind of make a list, pros and cons of it, and then sleep on it, and then reevaluate and see how important it was because he was so busy. So, everyone goes through this, right, from the highest level just to regular
Absolutely.
normies like us, right? So it's something that
Right.
everyone can relate to, and I think that's a good jumping off point to kind of get things out on paper and kind of really see what you're working with.
Absolutely. So when you get into overwhelm, think of each thought as being a word in your mind. Like, when a cartoon, right, you have like the words circled in, like, what would you call that? Like the the the
Speech
bubble.
bubble?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
speech bubble, right? So, okay, so when we're overwhelmed, I know I do this a lot, but don't forget, this is my international signal. What I'm doing is I have my hands above my head. For those of you that can't see me, this is my international sign, the international sign for thinking too much. Okay, too much is
Okay.
going on up here. Imagine those thoughts when you're in overwhelm. Oh my gosh, I have all these things to do. There's all of these bubbles, these word bubbles. And what we need to do is we need to get them on paper, like immediately. Write them down, write all the things down. And so your first piece of paper, you might not have the quadrants yet, but just start writing them down. All right, you gotta make the breakfast, you gotta walk the dog, you gotta drive to work, you got this meeting, you got that meeting. But what I also want you to do is write down, like Brian, you were saying, like, write down if you scroll on social media every day, like, write that down on your to-do list as well, like writing it all down, so that it's not in your head and you can actually look at what's stressing you out. Because let me tell you, that thought of gotta go check my Instagram, that's still there. That's one of those bubbles. So we need to get that out on paper first. That's going to be a huge relief for and then once we have it, we have something to work with, and we can put them in the quadrants, and we have a do first, we have a don't do it right now, we have a delegate, we have a schedule throughout the day. I'll do this. Does that Does that make sense? In the
Yeah,
way that I
absolutely.
kind of can visualize it, is just getting it out
Hmm.
is a great, and then we can work more about, we can talk more later about how do we get rid of those things, how do we delegate them. But I'm talking about, like, let's just take that first step, write it down.
Yeah, totally. And that kind of goes into a phrase that we like to use, like cutting the fat, right? Or um, you can easily, those quadrant four things, when you prioritize, you can maybe see how trivial they are compared to other stuff in your life, but they might be taking up so much of your time and bandwidth that the risk reward is not there, right? Why should something that is not long term or not long lasting or not as impactful as other things should why should that be kind of affecting me and putting me in such a state of mind?
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't. So,
Right.
being able to, kind of get rid of those things that are really
So
weighing you down is going to be really important.
what would you say your biggest cut the fat was or is, that you find you're doing that you probably don't need to do? I mean, I don't know, but I don't see you as a big social
Mhm.
media person. Do you have anything where you're kind of working like that out? Or maybe I don't
I
need
would say that there's a couple things. Actually, literally cutting the fat out, like in my
your
um,
diet.
hips and back, right? Like, so the when you're like staying up late and you are just when you're tired and thirsty, you can eat poorly.
Mhm.
When you're tired, your body thinks, oh, I have to stay up, so I need this sugar rush in my
Yes.
bloodstream, and I need those simple carbs, and then you're up late, so you're watching something or doing something, and you're drinking something with calories as well. So cutting out that kind of stuff also gives you an extra hour of sleep. Also, getting more sleep makes you so much more productive to tackle the first and
Yes.
second quadrants as well. So that is like super critical. You can get so much more done with your time when you're well rested. So that is definitely one. And then I would say, I mean, as far as social media goes, um, I think I did jump off Twitter a couple months ago for a while, and that was huge because things get like very redundant on there. And while it can be interesting and it can be something that is you can kind of be on autopilot while you're scrolling online,
Hmm.
you realize that you're missing not you're missing very little. There's
Yeah.
very there's few voices out there that are worth taking up a lot of that big of a part of the quadrant, right? So there's a lot
Sure.
people have a lot to say, and people, you know, in their own way have a lot of wisdom to share, but you know, we have to
Good.
be judicial with who we're listening to and who we're following and things like that. So eliminating that for a while was huge. I mean, with going into this season, I am back on, but I've definitely cut back a lot more than I used to. I mean, it was as simple as actually kind of just eliminating the app and having to go one extra step by having to go through a browser. So there are ways to kind of make those quadrant four things more difficult for you, like not having the
Yeah.
phone by the bed,
Mhm.
um, right next to you within reach. So, there's a lot of things that we can talk about those things, right?
Yeah.
Getting rid of those, cutting the fat. Cutting the fat could be a great episode
You absolutely,
in the future.
absolutely. No, thank you. That's very helpful. And back to my word of it, intentional, right? it, Social media can be fun if you go with an intent, right?
Mhm.
My intention is to be inspired, right? My intention is to learn something. My intention is for entertainment for the next 15 minutes. So that's fine. It's when we are overwhelmed and we go on social media and we're just adding more thought bubbles into our already full head. So it's actually not, it might be pausing them, but they're still there. So, yes, great example. Thank you so much. I
So
think that,
before um we wanted to make this really precise and concise, and we wanted to, give some actual tools that people could just get up and utilize right before maybe they go on to the website and read some more in-depth studies, or before let's wait for a follow-up episode where we have some more zeroed in kind of mediations or strategies. We do have a couple of people that had questions about overwhelm, like myself. I think from the newsletter how these were given to me, but this is a great time to mention that we do always want comments and questions, and whichever, if it's with Spotify's comment function, or it's to our email, or it's to tagging us on Instagram or YouTube, like we will try to always read everything, and then something that you question or share or comment on could be touched upon in a future episode. So the first one, there's a couple that I had highlighted. One was from Sarah to Tara, huh? How do you, Sarah in NYC, she asks, you'll take this. How do I know if what I'm feeling is overwhelm and not just typical stress? Good one.
Great question. I think that the semantics are not as important. I think we should focus on the tools that we're talking about. Overwhelm, again, to me, is going to be a lot of different things that are going on in your mind and you don't feel like you are getting any of them done, and they're churning, they're just floating around up there. Or if you're getting them done, you're only partially getting them done, they're not actually ever feeling resolved, and there's this feeling of uneasiness. Stress can be more of a overarching state. So yes, when you're overwhelmed, usually you're stressed, but you can be stressed and not really have much overwhelm. So that's a really great question. A lot of the things are going to be the same. It's in identifying what your intention is, what your priorities are, speaking your truth to those around you, especially to your loved ones, and writing things down, actually putting them down on paper so you can see what's happening. So you're taking inventory of what's going on and what you're overwhelmed with. And so, I would have to know exactly a little bit more about the stress.
Sure.
And then that last part that Brian, what you were talking on, also sleep, right? So when we don't have sleep, the overwhelm comes on a lot faster, and it's a little bit more challenging to get rid of, because our mental functioning is just not there. Our physiological, our hormones, our neurotransmitters, they're not supporting really what we need. So that is going to be a huge one.
Excellent. And the last one was from, look, it's Tara Connection. Mark in Northern, in NoCal. I don't know if that's a thing, but in Northern California. What can I do this is, it's kind of stereotypical of the northern parts of Northern California. What can I do if I'm overwhelmed at work, but can't take time off?
Yeah. So definitely the Eisenhower Method on a daily basis. And I'm also a big patterns person, right? So if you're doing an Eisenhower Method and you're finding that you feel like things aren't changing, well, I would want to see, okay, well, show me the week's worth of them and let's see what we can do. It's also, I meant to say earlier, Brian, for you, and I know you and your family are very are very close and have open dialogue, like show your kids this, like show them the eyes and say, hey, when they're saying, look, well, why can't I do this? Why can't we do this? And just say, hey, I want you to see what I have going on today, and maybe you can help me see what the priorities for the family or for me could be. So I would tell Mark, write that down, take notes on, and also there's always a way, right? You mentioned can't take time off. I would question, okay, did you have a conversation with your boss, right? Did you have a conversation with your coworkers, with your partner? Have you looked and really investigated? Because often we'll say, well, I can't do that before we've explored a lot of the options. So there is a lot that we could do. Excellent question. I think a lot of people are asking this as well, but I think that might be a good quote to end on is, and I'll look up exactly what the quote is, but it's like, we can't solve a problem from the same state of consciousness that it arose in. So we have to rise above. If we're stuck in overwhelm, a lot of the time, the solutions aren't there. It's once we get out of the overwhelm and we can shift to a different perspective, we can find a whole lot more solutions. So when we're saying like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, this is too hard, or this is impossible, it's not. It's actually not. And I want people to say like, that's okay to have that frame of mind. I get it. It's just it's relatively normal. But that's what we're here for, is to show you how to shift out of that perspective, how to shift out of that state of mind, and to raise your level of consciousness so that everything is figure outable. Everything has a solution.
Yeah, and I mean, microcosm of that is like while you're in that day struggling, you got to make sure that you take care of number one, and you know, whether it's take a walk to get lunch, or go to the break room or your car or somewhere nearby to kind of just do some deep breathing, stretching, getting some air. Your overwhelm will just grow in the workplace, because work is never going to be done at 5-6 o'clock, because it's just continuous. So if you're there, you got to kind of step out of that place, right? And disassociate yourself. And then you're going to hopefully, get that second wind, or get like some perspective when you're not staring at the screen, or, you're not staring at a bunch of tasks that your boss just gave you, and, you have no idea what kind of timeline you would possibly need to finish them, right? So make sure you're taking care of yourself. You're reading the signals that you get when you get too frustrated, and you use some of the strategies that we talked about, like the breathing, like the earthing.
Exactly.
I mean, a lot of the things that we had talked about,
that would be perfect.
they are related. They can be applied to overwhelm as well. But yeah, I feel like we really did a great job of, understanding what overwhelm is, understanding some of the signals that show us that we kind of need to slow down and take care of ourselves. I guess, and a couple of the things that you mentioned, it's definitely okay to ask for help, and it's definitely okay to prioritize your tasks and also your own well-being.
Absolutely. No, those were excellent tips, because I'm definitely not minimizing the stressors of day to day. Go back and listen to that episode. Use those tools, no matter what job, even if it's our dream job, right? And you can't take off of work. We're still human, right? So that's what we're trying to bring tools for everybody, right? It's not necessarily what we think, it's how we think, and we're trying to hack the how we're getting through our day so that we can bring more joy and peace.
And in a lot of ways, the dream job can also kind of increase the overwhelm, right? So it seems counterintuitive, but just going back to the starting of the year oneself, so passionate, so excited, so enthusiastic, so looking forward to it, but then it's just too much because you're trying to do too many things all at once, and then you became overwhelmed. You have to take a step back and
Yeah.
Another great thing about doing this podcast, everything that we're doing is it makes you kind of practice what you preach. So
Right.
thank you for all the insights today. Gave us a lot of valuable information, a lot of valuable tools. Thank everyone
Thank
for
you.
listening, watching, joining us on Journey to Your Best Self. Stay tuned for a lot of other amazing episodes as we're going to continue to explore integrating and harmonizing mind, body, and spirit. Make sure to comment, question, chat with us, subscribe to our YouTube, follow us on Instagram, go to youroneself.com, ancient wisdom, modern wellness. Take care of yourselves, and thank you so much, Tara.
Woohoo! All right. Till next time, sending my best to all of you.
All right. That's Tara O'Neill, and I'm, of course, Brian O'Neill, wishing you peace, love, and self-discovery.
Woohoo! Cheers to that.